a question that comes up from time to time is, how old does a kid need to be before you can start doing this? How old do you think a student needs to be before you can start moving through these steps for helping kids own and solve their problems? You have any thoughts on that? Pretty young? I've had people say, first grade, is that too young? Kindergarten age? Carla Mink. Carla Mink was her name. And she was a kindergarten teacher in a school in Denver. And she had this little guy, and he had a problem. He was coloring his little worksheet. That's what he was doing. He had his little Crayolas out, and he's coloring. And see, his mind wanted to do things that his little stubby fingers couldn't do yet. Isn't that a hard thing? And he wants to stay inside the lines. Now, he's fine with him. She is fine with him being outside of the lines, but he's got the standard. He wants to operate inside the lines. But his little stubby fingers just don't have enough coordination to match up with his high expectations for himself, and he goes outside of the lines, and how's he feeling? He's starting to get more frustrated all the time? Yeah. And then he's got his eraser out, and he's trying to erase crayon, and we all know how well trying to erase crayon works, and he's getting even more frustrated. Have you ever had a day like that as an adult where you said to yourself, you know what? Today, I'm going to stay inside the lines. And if I get outside of the lines, I'm going to fix it. And the problem is, during that day, you didn't stay inside of the lines and you couldn't fix it. That's a pretty frustrating thing, isn't it? I think we can all relate to that from a metaphorical standpoint. He's starting to have a meltdown. Before long, he takes the crayons in his hand, he just squeezes them together and he breaks them. Now he's got a bigger problem because he's a kid who wants to stay in the lines. And are you thinking he's also a kid who wants to put all those crayons right back in the slots where they came out of? Now he's trying to get them crammed in there. He's having a major meltdown. The rest of the kids are having a hard time focusing. And Carla said, I went over there and I thought I'd use the 5 steps. I looked at him and I just laid it on because I felt so bad for him. I said, oh, let's all practice again. Oh, it looks like you're having such a hard time. And he's just crying now, and they won't go back in. And he's trying to jam them in. And it's just this mess. And she decided, well, just a little bit of empathy is good. I think I'll give him some more. So she says again, oh, and they won't go in. It's got to be so hard. And she remembers that a soothing voice is a beautiful thing to somebody who's hurting. It says, would you like to hear some ideas about how to do that? And he says, what? And she says, well, some kids decide that it doesn't matter if they're all put together right. They can just get them in the slot, and they don't have to match up the colors. How will that work for you? And he did not like that. And so she empathized again. Let's hear it. And then she asked, would you like another idea? And he says, what? And she says, well, some students decide to just put them in this little bin. And they don't worry about getting them back in the box. He definitely did not like that idea. And he got upset again. And she said, oh. And she didn't have any other ideas. She wasn't feeling very good about her abilities. But she said, well, some kids decide to try to tape them together. And she went over, and she got the tape, and he took the tape out, and before long, it's stuck on his fingers, and it's stuck to himself. And he's pretty upset now again. And she says, oh. That was Mrs. Mink. The kids just loved her so much because that's the way she was. But notice what she's doing. She's allowing him to really struggle with this, isn't she? Because she knows, and coming close again, let's remember, she knows that the greater the struggle, the greater the reward. that the greater the struggle the kid has, the better the kid is going to feel about himself after he gets this solved. And by the way, the closer he's going to feel connected with her. And so he's struggling away, and she says, "Oh, would you like another idea?" And he says, "What?" And he says, "Some kids decide that it's okay if their teacher helps them." And he says, "Yeah." And so now she's there, and she's holding the tape on the table, sticky side up. And she says, some kids decide to put the 2 pieces of crayon on the tape, and then they roll it. And so she's just doing this whole thing with him, and now he's rolling one crayon up, and he looks at it, and it's kind of together, and he puts it in the box, and it goes down in the slot, and he's got a little smile on his face now. It's starting to click, you know. And then before long, she's got another strip of tape, and he rolls it across there, another one, you know. He puts it in there. He's feeling double good now, you know. And before long, he's holding the tape too, and she's only got one end of it. Notice what she's doing. She's just gradually transitioning this whole thing to him. And he still needed some help, but he rolls it across. Pretty soon he's got 9 of them rolled up, and they're kind of silly looking, and they'll never work real good again, but they went in the slot. And she said, his little face, oh, precious. When he got that last one in the slot and looked at me, he was so happy. And I said, look at that. Who did that? Now, by the way, is that a lot more effective than saying you did it? Who did that? See, I'm always trying to figure out how can I get the kid to give themselves more credit for success.